Hi, everyone. I'm Genevieve. We're just waiting for everyone to fill in. If you'd like to ask any questions, I know Kelsey, thanks Kelsey and Susie, will be watching the chat and I'll be asked them at the end. So feel free to use the chat or the Q&A anytime on any questions that you might have. And certainly you'll see my information, my contact information on, I think it's in the chat room. And on my website there, you can contact me, or at the end, I'll give my email and I think my phone number too is on there. So feel free anytime to reach out, ask me a question, or want to brainstorm. I'm a good listener, and it's all about chapter 2. And I'll share a little of my story as soon as we get started officially. I think everyone is filing in, so welcome everyone. So great to be part of Women's Forum. I joined 1 year ago exactly. I think I had 2 in-person events I got to attend before everything changed. So still getting used to not being with people, as we all are. And it's been a learning curve to do all the presentations on Zoom. And I'm sure it's a learning curve for everyone to have a presenter on Zoom as well. I really miss being with all of you and getting to know you. I know I've met some, but not all. Okay, I think, Kelsey, if you're good, I think I will just begin and I am going to share. And then a few slides in, I'm going to stop sharing because I want to tell you my story in a little bit more intimate way, just face-to-face, as much as we can do face-to-face. So this is how to turn the page for your chapter 2. This is me. I'm a personal strategist, an author, a speaker, and I'm the founder of Pajama Program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about my story. And I've written this book, Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas. The subtitle is really the meaningful part. It's how to transform your life, embrace the human connection, and lead with meaning. And I put it on discount this week because I'm doing a bunch of presentations. So you can get it for 99 cents just this week on the Kindle version if you'd like. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to guess that you are here because your heart might be now calling out for change for your chapter 2. Maybe you're feeling compelled to do something with more meaning and purpose. Living a more fulfilling life means taking the time to invest in yourself and that dream you've had on the back burner. It's the first step. And as you see here, I say from my experience that you'll never know, and I would never have known, the unlimited joy, freedom, peace, and satisfaction from changing course and finding my purpose. For me, a chapter 2. So I want to tell you my story. And I always wanted to be Mary Tyler Moore. I'm going to stop sharing because I want to talk about this a little bit more intimately. So I was born first out of 4 in a very traditional Italian household. My dad came from Italy, literally off the boat, age 15. His dad brought him, the only child. His mom sneezed a couple of times at the port in Italy and they wouldn't let her on the ship. So my father and grandfather sailed alone to the US. So my grandfather could give my dad the US experience and raise a family and have my grandfather's grandchildren here in America with all the opportunities he felt we'd have. So my dad married my mom, had 4 kids. I was the first. And I know that besides wanting us to have an education, a traditional Italian route would be get married and have kids. But that wasn't my personal beat. I had a different drummer, and I wanted to be Mary Tyler Moore. I wanted to be a single woman climbing that corporate ladder in a big city. For me, that was New York City. I live in Westchester County now, and wanted to have a great apartment, a great job, a great best friend, and of course, a fabulous wardrobe that Mary had, and all those experiences. And I would sneak down at the youngest age and watch all those episodes, and I still watch them. And she was my hero. So I did everything I could to reach that top floor in New York City. And I was on my way. I was working in marketing in the TV syndication business, loving it. Single, I had no time as a workaholic for marriage or family of my own, but I had experiences and great fun. I was making a good living. And to me, that was my goal. That was success. That was status. 12 years in, one afternoon in my pretty little apartment in the Riverdale section of the Bronx, I heard a voice come from here. And I knew it was from here. I knew it wasn't from here because these voices came constantly, as we all probably know, our head voices just chattering, but this was different. And it asked me, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? It was a bold question. I heard it clearly, and it floored me. I was literally very nervous about what that was and where it was coming from. I sat down, and I remember clearly saying to myself, wow, the answer is no. And in an instant, everything flipped. I realized I was just working for the success and status I thought would make me feel great and fulfilled and happy. But I realized I wasn't really making anything better for anybody. It was only, I was working for other people to make them rich. I was running so fast that I really would be alone forever if I didn't sit down and think about my answer to that question. So that afternoon, I thought, the one thing I'm missing is children, having children in my life. Nephews, niece, godsons, love them, but it's not the same. Those of you who have children and families know. So I thought, I see in my own backyard, I read the paper, I see the news of these children who are in harm's way being taken by police and social workers to a safe space. I work all day, maybe at night, I could find a place to read to these children, see where they are. So I called local police stations and they gave me some shelters, phone numbers. I called them and I said what you could say pre 9/11 in New York. Hi, I'm a nice lady. Can I come in and read to the children at night? And they said, you sound like a nice lady, sure. And I'm always grateful for the timing because it's not so easy to do that now. So I gathered up some children's books and I went after work to one of the shelters that I had spoken with. And as I went in, they ushered me to a room and there was very little in the room. The carpet was just torn up and there were no seats for adults. There were a couple of little benches and some coats, little children's coats piled up in the corner. I didn't know where I was, what anything else looked like besides the room they brought me in. And since I couldn't find a chair, I sat on the floor in my business suit with my bag of children's books. A couple of minutes later, I can see little faces peering in at the door. And one by one, the staff ushered in about a dozen children. And I'd say they were between the ages of 4 and 8. And I could see that they'd been through some kind of traumas because some of them had been crying. Some of their clothes didn't fit right. They were too tight or they were soiled. And some of them were really reluctant to come into the room. But eventually they did. And seeing me sitting on the floor, they sat on the floor with me. So here I was with these eyes looking at me and me looking at them. It was so eerily quiet. I just took a book and I started reading. And nobody made a sound. I just kept reading and showing them the pictures. And 45 minutes later, the staff said, okay, boys and girls, it's time to go to sleep. And they stood up and got online and went into another room. And I left. And it was the most surreal experience because I was more peaceful and more connected to myself and to another human being with those children than I had been for years in the crazy life that I had made for myself. So I was eager to go back and I went to a different shelter, and pretty much the shelters that I was going to were ones that were well known. And there are some that you couldn't find. You'd have to know somebody. That I'd been to those too. So one time I was sitting on the floor in a shelter doing the same thing about a month later or so. And when they asked the children to stand up to go into the room to go to sleep when we were finished reading, I got up and I followed. I wanted to see where they were going. And I followed them into another room, very similar, smaller though, with just cots and futons. And the lovely staff were helping the children, one, two, or more, onto a sofa, onto a cot or a futon, and saying, kids, we'll wake you in the morning. And some of the kids were crying and some were huddled together. They didn't have anything to change into. And all I had were flashes in the moment of my mom and bedtime and all the fun and the love that my sister and my brothers and I all felt when my mom went from my sister in my bed in our room to my brothers in their room. And we heard the giggling, and my mom would be tickling us and reading us story after story, and some she'd make up. And of course, we wanted another glass of milk and we wanted more to eat. And it was just so beautiful and loving. And I didn't remember that for 37 years. I was 37, and all those memories came rushing at me. And I'm looking at the scene, and it was all wrong what I was looking at. And so as they walked me to the door, the words that fell out of my mouth were, "Can I bring some pajamas next time?" Of course, my bedtime had pajamas, and I thought everyone did, or actually I didn't think anything, I just assumed, but these kids were sleeping in their clothes. And that was the one thing that actually came out of my mouth. "Can I bring some pajamas the next time?" And the staff thought that was a nice idea and said, sure. So the next time I went, I brought pajamas, different children. And after the same 45 minutes of reading, I had them stand up and I told them I had a special surprise for them. And I opened my bag of every size, color of pajamas. All week, all month, I had just been going crazy with the books and now with the pajamas to make sure I had more than enough so nobody would be left out. And I started handing out pajamas to each child. I had it asked to come into a line. And I got halfway through, and there was a little girl who came up to about my hip. And she was in pink and purple, and her clothes were soiled and tight, and her ponytails or pigtails were lopsided. And like all of them, she was silent the whole time. And I pulled out a pair of pink pajamas that I thought would fit her. And I said, honey, do you like these pink pajamas? These are for you. I know you like pink because you're wearing pink. Take your pajamas. And she just kept shaking her head, no, no, no. And I was stunned because I didn't know why she was saying no, but she was very, very determined to say no. And I tried again, same thing. She was so afraid, but she kept saying no and shaking her head. So I went to take her to the other room, but she didn't want to go. She made it known that she wanted to watch. Want to watch me give them to the rest of the children, which I did, one by one. I saw her with the corner of my eye, and I kept those pink pajamas on my shoulder. So just when everybody else had their pajamas, I went over to her and I knelt down and I tried one more time. And I said, honey, these are for you and they'll fit you, I'm sure. Feel how soft they are. And I rubbed them on her hand. And I said, don't you want your pajamas to sleep in? And she looked at me, and it took her a moment to say, what are pajamas? What are they? And it's a good thing I was kneeling. I couldn't even grasp the question. And I found myself having to explain that pajamas are what you change into to go to sleep, that she didn't have to wear her clothes. And I asked her what she wore to sleep, and she tugged on her pants, and she said, my pants. And she shrugged like that. And I kept it together because I wanted to cry. I didn't want her to think she said anything wrong. And I gave her the pajamas, and the staff changed her, and she looked back and she gave me a little smile. And that was the end of chapter 1 and the beginning of my chapter 2, only there's a lot that followed. And I'll tell you a little bit, most of it's in my book, and the book I made a decision to make it very honest about all the highs and the lows and all the things I did right and wrong and all the problems along the way and all the people that rallied. All I could do was think about these kids, and my love of the career I had built just was collapsing in front of me, and it was very difficult to balance both. Very difficult to hide this pajama thing, which I didn't even know what it was, from my bosses, my family, my friends, everyone, because I just didn't know what it was that I was doing or what it could be. And it's very hard still to talk about some of the heartaches and some of the stories that just made me know this was what I had to do now. That it didn't matter if I was 38. So the book talks a lot about the people that came through. One man called and heard what I was doing and said, "What are you doing? Why do you think this makes a difference? What are you really giving them besides pajamas?" And I thought he was going to arrest me. And finally he said, "I'm sorry, I seem to have scared you, but I want you to know that I was one of those little boys in an orphanage. And I cried myself to sleep every night, so alone. And what you're giving these children means so much you'll never know." Things like that and people like that come to us when we are on purpose. And often it's not until our chapter 2 when we realize what our heart's been nudging us to do or to change. And boxes and boxes flooded to my apartment when a little tiny article in a national magazine, Parenting magazine, came out, because a woman from the magazine called and said, "Are you the lady giving pajamas to the shelters in Harlem? Can we write a little article?" And I didn't think much of it, and I did. And just before that, I had met a great guy. The universe, again, works its magic. And I said, okay, I have to let somebody know what I'm doing in my personal life. And I told him I didn't know what I'd be doing because I still had my job, but I really wanted to find a way to give that up and give pajamas to kids for the rest of my life. And he said, go for it. And that's when I knew I had my very first ally. And when I got home one day after that article apparently ran, thousands of boxes, thousands, and letters were on my doorstep of my little apartment. And as we opened them and ate dinner on them and got lost in the sea of these boxes, one letter said, "Please send us your 501c3 so we can give you a grant." And that's when I turned to him and I said, "What is this 501c3 thing?" And from that point, I knew that this was a responsibility, not just something that I was passionate about. So there are so many stories and so many people that helped along the way, including Oprah. And it was a great segment that aired 3 times in 2007 and 2008. You can see it on my website or in my email or on YouTube. But all these people led me to the lesson that I want to share about how important finding and living our purpose is, no matter how far we're into one traditional role or how old we are or what the circumstance is. And 20 years now, Pajama Program's 20 years old this year. We've surpassed 7 million new pajamas and new books for children in need across the US, and 63 volunteer chapters around the US. And it's because of the rallying of people who felt that little girl's pain and loneliness, just like I did. I told that story 24/7 to anybody who would listen. And it was always as if that person was standing in front of that little girl and they heard her ask that question, what are pajamas? What are these? And because of that human connection, I know that although people said so many times, oh, look at the power of one. I heard it before I started Pajama Program, and I heard it for 20 years. The power of one, you started something, look at this. It's not the power of one. It's the power of one another that moves mountains and moves people. And that's the beauty of finding your purpose. It's not just for you. It's I say magical. It's something that moves people and affects people and changes things, because it's your purpose. It's all of us have one, and it's not just going to change your life. It's going to change so many. So if I can share again and bring you back to Mary Tyler Moore, and then my chapter 2, you can see the boxes, and this is early on, just carrying pajamas. And we went down to Hurricane Katrina with thousands, 11,000 we collected for Hurricane Katrina, and brought them down south on big trucks that were donated. And some of the children here, and it starts as a dream, and I'm going to guess that your chapter 2 might be your dream. So I'll go through some more practical steps, but I wanted to share that because I was really unsure at age 37 and 38 that should I make a change or not? And I was so scared, and I was so excited at the same time. And although my heart was bleeding, my head was fighting it. But the more I believed it and the more I stayed on course, the more my head, I guess, decided, well, she's going to do this thing. So let our heart lead and we'll contribute what we know. And thankfully, my heart took the lead, but my head followed, and that will happen. I've seen it. I coach so many people. We talk about where they are, and it's so rewarding to be a personal strategist as well as to make presentations to groups, because it changes so much. So finding your purpose has very little to do with the shoulds and obligations and expectations, and everything to do with your heartfelt feelings about your life. And as I can't say enough, it affects the world and everyone in it. It's your life, it's your purpose, only you can live it. So I do my presentations with the acronym PAJAMAS. Since I say find your purpose is find your pajamas, I found my purpose in pajamas. So for the P, I do a whole hour test with individuals on finding their purpose if they're not sure. And it starts with a couple of hours of alone time, a glass of wine or a cup of green tea or whatever, some music and a pad and paper, and starting with the 10 loves in your life down to the 2. And part of it is, especially in this climate, is this a jump or a slide? Obviously, I made a jump. My book talks about how probably could have been the biggest mistake of my life, and it was painful and difficult financially, and that's how I chose to do it. But for a lot of my clients, a slide works, especially now, this past year, to sort of get used to bringing it into your life a little bit, and even a little bit makes you feel so purposeful. So next, I suggest appraising your current situation. What's the time frame you're looking at? What's the cost of your change? It can be financial, it can be personal, it can be both, it could be geographical, anything. And assessing how making this change would be different from your current situation and your job. This is my now husband. We were married years ago after I started this crazy obsession of pajamas, and it was something that I had to help him deal with, because he was helping me, but I was ignoring him, and we were newlyweds, and it was a very difficult time, and it was really challenging. And so looking back, I've learned that there are better ways to handle the people in your life who will be affected. So this is just a picture just to show that it does affect people, and you have to get through that and deal with that, like I did. More on the jump or the slide. Do you want it as full-time? Something on the side? Financial considerations are a big thing to consider, and the timing. How badly do you want it? Some people I know are just so eager, and this pandemic and quarantine has just made them even more eager to do what they feel would be more meaningful, and I get that. And I get that if you have to put food on the table and keep your job or find a job, that's priority. And that's why sometimes the slide works for people right now. Adjust, another A. Do you need more research or more education? Do you need moral supporters? I have a story in my book about the very first person I let in on my thoughts. It was at the very beginning, and even when I practiced what I'd say to her, it sounded ridiculous. I'm going to give out my big career of 12 years, and I'm going to give pajamas to these children. And that's sort of how it came out. And she really didn't get it. And I felt like every question, every challenge over a glass of wine with her was another punch in the gut. And I learned, and I teach in my book and to my clients, that you need to rally your cheerleaders first, because there will be those people who are going to say, what are you doing? And if you have those cheerleaders, they'll help you get up after you might get sucker punched like I did. So those moral supporters are key. Again, the financial changes have to be considered, the time management. There'll be a time of emotional and practical overlap. I found out that is probably one of the truest thing of these 9 things. There is that overlap where you're trying to juggle. And I say, leave juggling to the clowns, because it's so hard to think you've got it made, you can handle both, no problem. Your lifestyle changes if there'll be any, your relationship changes if there'll be any, reorganizing your responsibilities, and is there somebody that is going to be disappointed or that will have a difficult time that you want to consider how to bring them in. The M, making your decision. It is an incredible moment. It is a commitment that changes everything. It just sort of switches on in your brain that this is for real, and you get this burst of energy that lasts for a long time, and there will be ups and downs, but that moment is so key. And you're going to feel so excited, but you're also going to feel like this, because I did too. So it's a combination of exhilaration and fear. And about the fear, feel the fear and do it anyway, and all of that, which I try to do, and all of us do. But I watched sappy movies, and I heard someone in them say, sometimes you just have to do it afraid. And that's become really important for me to remember. Sometimes you're not going to get over the fear, or you're not going to make it disappear. You just have to do it afraid. Another A is, in order to arrive, set clear goals, step by step, confirm the support you have. Financial plan needs to be in order. Action steps, small ones, so that you know you can check them off and feel accomplished. Keeping your eye on the finish line. And most of all, be sure to bring you. There was so much of me that I left when I joined the corporate world. And even though it was TV syndication, it still was pretty corporate. And I guess I didn't feel like 100% me. But if you bring 100% you, and I bring my love of Mary Tyler Moore to everything I do, and I remember her, and I'm fond of where I was then. And my husband says I'm like Lucy. Sometimes I do things in a crazy way. And I love shoes. If you follow me, you'll see every Saturday I post a pair of my shoes with a saying, a life saying. And you're there, in there, and maybe it hasn't come out fully because you haven't been ready for your real true purpose or your chapter 2, that freeing part of your life. And it's really, really important that you bring you. And the last letter in pajamas is the steer. Beware of temptations, stay in your lane. For so many years, people would say, oh, you do pajamas and books, that's great. How about doing bottles, or how about doing blankets, or how about doing stuffed animals? And people will hear about what you're doing and want to offer suggestions, and we stayed in our lane. And it's all about bedtime. And after 20 years, we're just now going to be teaching some of the caregivers and some of the parents who aren't familiar with their children's bedtime routines because they weren't given a routine at bedtime. So it's still about the routine of bedtime. So we've not steered away, and that goes for everybody who's making a change. Stay on course, stay in your lane, stay on your map. Don't speed or take shortcuts. Limit those backseat drivers. Stop and rest along the way, which a lot of us forget, especially for A personalities. But somebody gave me advice that I want to share. Celebrate all the steps on the journey, all the steps, large and small, and all the people that have helped you. Have a glass of wine or a beer or a piece of cake or anything for the smallest celebration, because it matters and it carries you to the next. So here are the pajamas. Here's the acronym again. Possibilities: to appraise and evaluate your situation. Is it a jump or a slide? What do you need to prepare? Make your decision. What do you need to arrive safely? And stay in your lane. So I'd like to leave you with one more, this question one more time. Remember that if you're not sure what it takes to change your direction, ask yourself that question. If this is the next 30 years of my life, is it enough? And you might just hear yourself answer it, and you might be surprised. So again, finding your purpose has very little to do with the shoulds, obligations, and expectations, and everything to do with your heartfelt feelings and what you choose to do with your life. It's your life and it's your purpose, and only you can live it. So my information's here. If you want to talk about anything that you're going through or want to know more about changing your life or starting your chapter 2, and if you want to connect anywhere, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know what you're thinking, what you're doing. Just brainstorm. I'm a good listener, and I'd love to hear from you. So if there are, I don't know if there are any questions or anybody, Kelsey, if you're there, are there any questions or anything that anyone's asking?
No, it looks like we're question free at this point. So if there's anything you want to share, otherwise it's up to you if you want to wrap it up or however you like.
No, I think we can wrap it up. I just ask if anybody has any questions or anything, contact me directly and let me know if you read my book, if anything resonates in there, and you can visit my website and certainly learn more about Pajama Program at pajamaprogram.org. Thank you, everyone.